Imagine signing off on a $2.5 trillion global budget for a revolutionary new technology.
Right, just a massive amount of money.
Yeah, but while you do that, you're staring at a report that explicitly states 95% of those initiatives are going to fail.
Oh, wow, yeah. That is terrifying.
Welcome to the great AI reckoning. Okay, let's unpack this. Because for the past 3 years, if you walked into an executive meeting and merely suggested your department was looking into artificial intelligence.
You were basically handed a blank check.
Exactly, a total blank check. The fear of missing out was so intense that the normal rules of corporate gravity just did not apply to AI. You didn't even need a business case.
No, you just needed the word transformation on a slide deck and you were good to go.
Right. But if you're listening to this right now, whether you manage a team or lead a tech division or sit in the C-suite and you've been riding that wave of unquestioned funding, the honeymoon is officially over.
It really is. And what's fascinating here is the complete shift in vocabulary happening at the highest levels of business right now.
How do you mean?
Well, for the first few years of this boom, the AI conversation was completely monopolized by tech leaders. They spoke the language of capability. Neural network parameters, boundless possibility, reshaping the future of work.
Which sounded amazing.
It did. And for a while, selling that vision was totally enough to get funding. But the timeline has shifted. The CFO has officially entered the chat.
And they do not care about boundless possibility.
Exactly. Finance leaders don't speak the language of possibility. They speak the language of cost of ownership, payback periods, hard outcomes. We are rapidly moving from an era of capability to a very strict, uncompromising era of accountability.
Which means we have a massive collision happening right now. And to understand why this reckoning is hitting organizations so hard today, we have to look at the sheer scale of the disconnect.
Right.
We are grounding today's deep dive in a hard-hitting piece by AI thought leader Johan Steyn. It's titled, "When the Finance Function Comes for Your AI Budget, What Will You Show Them?"
It's such a great read.
It is. And his analysis starts with this massive chasm between what is being spent on AI and what is actually being earned. According to Gartner, global AI spending is projected to hit a staggering $2.52 trillion in 2026.
Trillion. With a T.
Yeah, a 44% year-over-year increase. The money hose is just blasting at full volume, yet only 20% of organizations are actually generating any revenue through AI.
Which leaves the other 80% just kind of holding the bag.
Right. For them, it is still just an extremely expensive aspiration.
And that gap between the trillions pouring in and the vast majority of companies seeing literally zero financial return, that's the exact fault line where this reckoning is taking place.
It makes sense why executives are panicking.
Oh, absolutely. Fortune recently reported that 61% of CEOs are feeling intense, mounting pressure from their boards to show actual AI returns. It's a complete shift from that let's just experiment attitude we saw last year.
Yeah.
But the most critical piece of data Steyn highlights comes from a pretty sober MIT study. It reveals that 95% of enterprise AI initiatives fail.
See, I have to stop you right there because this is where the narrative stops making sense to me.
Okay.
I want to push back on that 95% failure rate because the technology we are talking about is undeniably powerful. Right?
Fair.
We see it passing bar exams, writing code in seconds, analyzing crazy complex data sets. If the tools themselves are practically magical right now, why are 95% of these corporate initiatives crashing and burning?
It's a fair question.
It feels like, I don't know, it's like dropping a Formula One engine into a 2012 commuter car.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Right. The engine itself, the AI model, is an absolute marvel of engineering. But if you just drop it in without upgrading the transmission or the brakes or the chassis...
The moment you hit the gas, the whole car just tears itself apart.
Exactly.
And that is the perfect way to visualize the mechanism of failure here. That 95% failure rate is not a technological shortcoming. The F1 engine works perfectly.
So what's breaking?
The failure is almost entirely a lack of governance and structural alignment. When you look at the 5% of companies in that MIT study that are actually succeeding, they aren't using secret, better AI models that the rest of the world doesn't have access to.
Right. They're using the same stuff.
Exactly. The research shows they're doing three very specific things differently. They focus on human enablement, strategic alignment, and disciplined execution.
Let's translate those terms a bit because they do sound a little like corporate buzzwords. When you say human enablement, what does that actually mean on the ground for, a normal employee?
It means they don't just buy a sophisticated AI tool, drop it on their employees' laptops, and expect productivity to magically soar.
Which is what everyone does.
Right. Human enablement means fundamentally restructuring how people work. It means extensive training. It means building trust so that employees actually use the tool instead of quietly reverting back to their old manual spreadsheets.
Because the AI interface is too confusing.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, enablement, alignment, and execution are leadership traits. They are governance traits. The organization doesn't need better code right now. It needs a better operational chassis to handle that Formula One engine.
Okay, but if governance and leadership are the main mechanisms of failure, why is it so hard to fix? I mean, the leaders all work for the same company. They all want the stock price to go up.
You would think so.
But Steyn's article points out there is a severe C-suite misalignment happening right now behind closed doors. Fortune actually found that 65% of CEOs admit they are not aligned with their CFOs on the long-term value of AI.
And when you are managing a $2.5 trillion global budget, a 65% misalignment at the very top is a recipe for absolute disaster.
Yeah, that's wild.
Steyn breaks down the mechanics of this misalignment into what we can call the three lenses.
Okay.
In any given company, you have three key leaders looking at the exact same AI pilot program, but they're evaluating it through completely different, often highly conflicting frameworks.
Let's make this real for the listener. Let's imagine a mid-sized insurance company rolls out an internal AI chatbot for their claims adjusters.
Great example.
How do these three lenses apply to that one specific tool?
Well, let's start with the tech leader. They look at this chatbot through the lens of innovation capacity and technical metrics. They see that the API latency is incredibly low, the system uptime is 99.9%, and the model retrieves data accurately.
So to them, this pilot is a massive quantifiable success.
Huge success. Then you have the CEO. The CEO is looking through the lens of business model transformation. They honestly aren't looking at latency at all.
They just want a good story.
Exactly. They are looking at the narrative. They see this chatbot as proof that they are now an AI-first insurance company. It's a story they can confidently sell to shareholders and the media.
Okay, so the tech leader and the CEO are thrilled. High fives all around, but then the CFO enters the chat.
And the CFO looks entirely through the lens of the balance sheet. The CFO pulls the actual usage metrics and sees that the claims adjusters are only using the chatbot 10% of the time, mostly because it requires too many prompts to get the right answer.
Oh, wow.
Meanwhile, the cloud computing bill to keep that massive language model running 24/7 just jumped by $3 million this quarter.
Yikes.
Right. So the CFO looks at the CEO and the tech leader and says, you bought a $3 million toy that nobody's actually using.
3 leaders, 1 tool, 3 completely incompatible realities.
And nobody's doing the hard work of reconciling those views into a single, unified business case.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If I'm playing the role of that tech leader, I'm going to argue that the CFO's lens is fundamentally flawed. Well, you simply cannot measure innovation capacity on a traditional spreadsheet. If that chatbot saves an adjuster 20 minutes a day, giving them more mental bandwidth, or if it even slightly improves the tone of an email sent to a frustrated customer, aren't those intangible benefits real?
Sure they are.
Aren't CFOs just stifling necessary progress by demanding rigid, old-school ROI metrics for a technology that is entirely new?
That is the most common defense used by tech leaders today, hands down.
Right.
But Deloitte recently published research outlining exactly why that intangibles argument is rapidly falling apart under scrutiny.
Right.
They identified 3 specific structural challenges that finance leaders are facing right now with AI.
Okay, what are they?
The first is exactly what you just mentioned. The benefits of AI are often intangible. Things like improved customer relations or faster decision-making don't map neatly onto a profit and loss statement.
Which seems like a point in favor of the tech leader. You just can't put a strict dollar amount on employee morale or cognitive relief.
You can't. But the second challenge makes that defense incredibly precarious. Deloitte notes that AI technology evolves much faster than the benchmarks created to measure it.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, any longitudinal data you try to gather about productivity becomes obsolete almost instantly because the model gets updated or the interface changes next month.
Right, you can't hit a moving target.
Exactly. But it's the third challenge that acts as the absolute nail in the coffin for the intangibles argument, and that is the severe underestimation of costs.
They're hidden costs.
Precisely. Organizations will eagerly budget for the obvious line items, the software licensing fees, the massive cloud infrastructure bills, but they completely fail to account for the unglamorous, highly expensive human reality of making AI actually function in a corporate setting.
Let's dig into that because the source material mentions things like data labeling. For a listener who isn't, managing a machine learning pipeline day to day, why is data labeling such a massive hidden cost?
Because an AI model doesn't inherently know how to read your company's specific, messy data. It doesn't just magically organize 10 years of disorganized PDF contracts and random customer email.
It's not a mind reader.
Right. It requires hundreds, sometimes thousands of hours of highly paid human labor to read, tag, organize, and label that data before the AI can even begin to process it safely.
And that human labor costs millions.
Millions. Add to that the cost of setting up new cybersecurity governance frameworks and the massive change management costs of retraining your entire staff.
So the CFO isn't just being a rigid dinosaur.
Not at all.
The CFO is looking at a bleeding balance sheet flooded with hidden human labor costs, while the tech leader points to faster email drafting as the justification.
Exactly. When you rely solely on intangible benefits, but your hidden operational costs are actively draining the company's cash, that lack of a unified plan is what turns a defended investment into a canceled one.
Man, when the finance function finally demands a hard accounting of the ROI, that gap between the lenses becomes fatal. The era of AI for AI's sake is undeniably over.
It is done.
And if these hidden costs are draining budgets in cash-rich environments, what happens when this dynamic plays out in a market where there is absolutely no room for error? Steyn's article transitions to look at the South African business environment as a sort of microcosm of these global pressures.
Yes.
And even if you have never set foot in South Africa, this environment serves as the ultimate global stress test for AI deployment.
It truly is a perfect crucible.
Yeah.
South African organizations are currently navigating an environment of highly constrained capital. They face severe infrastructure challenges, incredibly high operating costs, and intense margin pressure.
Meaning there is absolutely zero comfortable buffer for an underperforming AI investment.
Zero.
If a massive tech giant in Silicon Valley wastes $10 million on an AI pilot that goes nowhere, it's a rounding error on their quarterly earnings.
They brush it off.
Right. But if a mid-sized logistics firm in a highly constrained market wastes that same capital, they might miss payroll. It's like tightrope walking without a net. You can't just throw millions at a sandbox experiment and hope you miraculously land on a revenue stream.
And this raises an important question regarding behavior modification. When you operate in an environment with no net, how does it change your approach to technology?
You get extremely careful.
Exactly. The global ROI problem we've been unpacking is amplified tenfold in this context. It is more expensive to deploy, the market is completely unforgiving, and a failure directly impacts the jobs and livelihoods tied to the organization's financial health.
The stakes are literally existential.
Which means organizations operating in these tight margin environments are forced to demand clear, undeniable business cases long before they ever approve the budget.
They can't just guess.
No, they do not have the luxury of deploying the technology first and then going on a scavenger hunt to find the value later. They must establish outcome metrics at the point of investment. And what Steyn is arguing is that this extreme financial discipline born out of necessity in places like South Africa is exactly the discipline that the rest of the corporate world is going to be forced to adopt by 2026.
Okay, so the blank check is bounced. The CFO is knocking on the door.
Loudly.
Very loudly. So how do organizations, and how do you, the listener, whether you're trying to secure a budget for a new tool or trying to justify the one you already have, actually survive this boardroom showdown? How do you move out of the 95% failure rate and into that successful 5%?
Well, the survival guide starts with recognizing the absolute urgency of the moment. You have to establish an agreed-upon methodology for measuring the value of your AI program before the CFO demands it.
Be proactive.
Highly proactive. If you wait for the budget review meeting to be scheduled on your calendar to start figuring out your ROI, you have already lost the program.
But we just spent the first half of this deep dive establishing that traditional ROI is incredibly tricky here because of intangible benefits and constantly evolving benchmarks. So what does a successful methodology actually look like in practice?
CFO Dive recently published an analysis that provides a very clear roadmap for this. They argue that you have to move entirely beyond basic efficiency numbers.
Because efficiency doesn't automatically equal money.
Exactly.
If an AI tool saves me an hour a day, I'm probably just using that hour to clear out my inbox or take a longer lunch. I'm not organically generating new revenue for the company with that saved hour.
Precisely. Proving that an AI tool made a worker 10% more productive isn't enough for a CFO anymore, because that productivity rarely translates directly to the bottom line unless the company is actively firing people.
Which creates its own massive, expensive change management crisis.
Exactly. The new methodology must measure how AI is driving hard, tangible outcomes. Is it directly driving top-line revenue growth? Or, alternatively, is it providing measurable risk and fine avoidance?
Oh, that's a good angle.
Yeah, for example, if an AI compliance tool prevents a massive regulatory fine, that is a hard dollar amount a CFO can take directly to the board.
Let's talk about disciplined execution, which was one of the traits of the successful companies we mentioned earlier. What does disciplined execution look like when you are actually sitting down to design one of these programs?
The research consistently identifies one shared operational trait among the companies that are actually succeeding. They anchor their AI initiatives to a specific pre-existing business problem from day one.
So they don't start with the tech.
They never start with the technology. They start with a broken process.
So there is a crucial sequence shift here. It's the difference between buying that massive Formula One engine just because you want to see how fast it can spin on a test block versus buying a stronger engine specifically because your current delivery trucks can't make it up a steep hill on your most profitable route.
Yes, that is exactly it. An AI investment designed to solve a clear business problem with agreed-upon success metrics established before the software is even purchased is a fundamentally different proposition than a cool tech pilot that quietly grew into a massive infrastructure expense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Disciplined execution means having an exit strategy. It means looking the CFO in the eye and saying, if this tool doesn't reduce supply chain bottlenecks by 15% in the next 4 months, we will pull the plug.
Which brings us to the ultimate synthesis of Johan Steyn's argument. And this is a perspective shift that might honestly surprise some tech leaders. He argues that the CFO's intent scrutiny shouldn't be viewed as an obstacle to innovation.
Not at all.
It should actually be viewed as a feature.
It is the missing puzzle piece. The CFO's arrival is what will actually save enterprise AI from completely collapsing under its own weight. By imposing the exact same financial rigor on AI as any other major capital allocation, the finance function forces intentionality. It provides the necessary structural governance that has been missing, which is the root cause of that 95% failure rate we discussed.
So lean into it.
Yes. The uncomfortable conversation you have been avoiding with your finance team is the exact conversation that will save your program from being canceled when the board inevitably asks where the $2.5 trillion went.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. To wrap up this deep dive, the central takeaway is totally unavoidable. The AI honeymoon is officially over.
Over and done.
We are staring down a multi-trillion-dollar reckoning, and the fundamental question in boardrooms has changed. It is no longer, what can this AI do? The only question that matters now is, what is this AI returning?
The CFO has entered the chat.
They sure have. And survival in 2026 means proving value through clear, predefined business outcomes, rigorous governance, and extreme financial discipline, rather than just pointing to a flashy tech demo.
The era of unaccountable capability is behind us. The accountability moment is here. And the organizations that thrive moving forward won't necessarily be the ones with the most sophisticated AI models. They will be the ones with the most organizational discipline.
And as we leave you today, I want to give you one final provocative thought to mull over, building on something we touched on earlier regarding the hidden costs of human labor. Think about this. Artificial intelligence was originally sold to the corporate world as the ultimate frictionless tool to drastically reduce human labor costs.
Right.
But if the hidden requirements of keeping these AI models running safely, accurately, and legally require massive, unaccounted for human oversight, data labeling, and governance, is the true long-term financial legacy of AI actually going to be the creation of an entirely new, highly paid human bureaucracy?
That is a fascinating question.
Something to think about the next time you look at your department's tech budget. Thanks for exploring with us, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.